Okay, so every villain has an origin story, right? Even the big bads like Sauron. And this one, well, let's just say, you wouldn't expect a Dark Lord to have such an unexpected beginning.
Right. It's not your typical villain origin story.
Not at all. So we're diving into this source. You've got Sauron, the Dark Lord of Middle-earth. Let's uncover the path from, get this, Meren, the gifted Meren, to the Dark Lord of Mordor we all know and fear.
It's wild when you think about it like that. And what I find so fascinating is that Sauron, or I guess I should say Meren, wasn't born evil. He started as, well, imagine a powerful being, kind of like an angel, totally dedicated to Ollie.
Ollie, that's the god of craftsmanship, right?
Okay.
Talk about a resume builder. You'd think with an origin story like that, Sauron would have started as some kind of, like, evil blacksmith or something.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it's way more interesting than that. He wasn't out there forging weapons. He was Ollie's star pupil.
So instead of weapons of mass destruction, he's crafting, what, perfectly symmetrical flower pots? Honestly, I can't tell which is scarier.
Our source describes him as being obsessed with order, precision. Meren wanted to perfect everything, every little detail.
And that's where it gets kind of chilling, right? Because that desire for control, for wanting to shape the world in his image, that's the foundation for tyranny.
It makes you wonder, where's the line? When does striving for excellence turn into craving domination? We've seen it happen throughout history. Brilliant minds warped by ambition. It's a sobering thought.
Okay, so how does someone like Meren, who seemingly started with good intentions, take that left turn into Dark Lord territory?
Our source points to a classic catalyst. A bad influence. Morgoth, the original Dark Lord.
Of course, because every good villain needs a mentor.
Exactly. Morgoth sees an opportunity in Meren, a tool to manipulate. Imagine the whispers of power, the promises to reshape the world.
So Morgoth basically says, hey Meren, you know that whole order and perfection thing you're into? Let's go big or go home.
Essentially. He appeals to Meren's desire for control, but then twists it into this lust for domination. And that's when Meren truly becomes Sauron. Cue the ominous music.
Talk about a rebrand. But it's more than just a name change, right? Our source talks about how his abilities evolve, how he goes from this master craftsman to a sorcerer, even mastering shape-shifting. It's an upgrade.
That shape-shifting is key. It speaks to Sauron's growing deception, his willingness to appear as whatever or whoever he needs to be to achieve his goals.
Which is terrifying when you think about it, because evil rarely announces itself as evil, right? It puts on a mask.
A very convincing mask.
And speaking of masks, our source paints a pretty vivid picture of Sauron at this point. Lord of Tolan Garhoth, the Isle of Werewolves.
Not exactly the kind of vacation destination you'd want to pick out of a travel brochure.
You're telling me? It sounds like my kind of nightmare. But seriously, this is Sauron embracing the monstrous.
Absolutely. The Isle of Werewolves marks a significant shift. His power is growing, but so is his capacity for cruelty. He's no longer just about order. He's reveling in darkness.
Which is what makes what happens next so interesting. We're talking about the tale of Beren and Luthien, a classic and one of my favorites, but for those who haven't had the pleasure.
Imagine this.
Beren and Luthien are on this quest, right? They're trying to steal a Silmaril, this super powerful gem, from Morgoth himself, and who's guarding Morgoth's fortress, Sauron, in his most terrifying werewolf form.
And here's the twist. Luthien has this companion, Huan. But Juan's no ordinary hound. He's a magical wolfhound blessed by the Valar.
So not exactly an equal opportunity employer when it comes to canine companions.
Their clash. It's not just a fight, it's symbolic. Divine destiny, good versus evil. It's the ultimate showdown.
And let me tell you, Sauron picked the wrong elf princess and magical dog to mess with. This defeat wasn't just a flesh wound, it left a mark.
Oh, it definitely left a mark. You don't just brush off a beat down from a divinely appointed wolfhound. Our source suggests Sauron developed a bit of a complex after that, a deep-seated fear of wolves.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he started sleeping with a nightlight after that. Talk about a traumatic experience. But hey, at least he didn't swear off dogs forever, right?
Well, about that, see, Sauron, he doesn't just get over it, he tries to conquer it. His answer to this newfound fear, he starts breeding these, well, monstrous wolves. You know, the kind that make regular wolves look like cuddly puppies.
Talk about overcompensating. But hey, who am I to judge? Everyone has their coping mechanisms. But let's move on from puppy power, shall we? Because when we get to the Second Age, Sauron 2.0 comes online.
He learned from his defeat, which, let's be honest, is a terrifying thought in itself.
Right, like, okay, time to update my strategy. Brute force didn't work. Time for Plan B, world domination through cunning and deception.
Something like that. Sauron realizes that domination doesn't always have to come from might. Influence can be far more effective. Our source really highlights this shift to a more strategic, long-game approach.
So he trades in his spiky armor for a nice suit and starts offering motivational seminars on how to achieve your evil overlord dreams.
Not exactly, but he does understand that to control others, you first need to gain their trust. And that's where Anatar comes in.
Anatar, aka Sauron's attempt at a makeover.
Precisely. He adopts this guise of a benevolent, even charming being, calls himself the Lord of Gifts. I mean, who wouldn't want to be friends with a guy like that?
Right, free gifts. Sign me up. Though knowing Sauron, there's always a catch.
Oh, a huge catch. He specifically targets the elves, especially the ones known for their craftsmanship, the very beings who would later become known for forging the Rings of Power.
Okay, but hold on. This is where it gets seriously messed up. Sauron, the guy who wants to enslave entire races, is basically the mastermind behind the creation of the very objects that could lead to his ultimate dominion, or his downfall. You can't make this stuff up.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? Did he truly believe he could control such power, or was there a fatal flaw in his plan from the very beginning?
Speaking of fatal flaws, let's not forget about the One Ring forged in the fires of Mount Doom. That's Sauron at his most potent and, in a way, his most vulnerable.
It's important to remember, though, that even with the One Ring, Sauron's fate is often shaped by the actions of others, not just his own choices.
Kind of takes the whole mastermind thing down a peg or two. So what happens? Do the elves see through his little charade?
Eventually, yes. The moment Sauron puts on the One Ring, the elves sense his true intentions. Their trust, so carefully cultivated, shatters.
Talk about a mood killer. So what's a Dark Lord to do when his carefully laid plans blow up in his face? He throws a temper tantrum, right?
Something like that. The War of the Elves and Sauron is a testament to his fury, his desperation. He might have lost the element of surprise, but at this point, his power is undeniable. And just when things couldn't get worse for the elves, enter the Númenóreans, sailing in to save the day. Or so they think.
Oh boy, talk about walking into the spider's web. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into, huh?
Right, it's a classic case of be careful what you wish for. The Númenóreans, they swooped in with their impressive armies, ready to put Sauron in his place. But Sauron, he's already playing the long game here.
And I'm guessing that doesn't involve a strongly worded letter of complaint.
Not quite. See, Sauron, he orchestrates his own capture by the Númenóreans. Think about that.
He basically lets them take him prisoner. Seems kind of counterproductive for a Dark Lord with world domination on his to-do list.
That's the brilliance of it. He recognizes their military strength, right? So he engineers a different kind of victory. He aims to conquer not by force, but from within. Corrupt them, turn their strengths into weaknesses. It's a classic strategy, really.
Yeah, go for the Trojan horse approach. Except this time, the Trojan horse is a disgruntled Maia with a penchant for mind control.
And it works. Once he's their guest, so to speak, he starts to work his magic. Our source really emphasizes how Sauron zeroes in on a very human weakness, the fear of death.
Death and taxes are the two guarantees in life, right?
Exactly. But the Númenóreans, they were blessed with incredibly long lifespans. Still, they weren't immortal, and over time, as our source points out, that awareness of their mortality starts to gnaw at them. Even those who live for centuries, they don't want it to end.
Makes you wonder if immortality is all it's cracked up to be.
That's a conversation for another time, perhaps. But the point is, Sauron sees an opportunity here.
Of course he does. Leave a bowl of milk out overnight and you're guaranteed to attract every stray cat in the neighborhood. Same principle applies to Dark Lords, I guess. So, how does he use this fear to his advantage? Does he offer them a timeshare in Mordor? Promise them a lifetime supply of lumbas bread?
He's a bit more subtle than that. He starts by introducing them to the worship of Morgoth.
Wait, isn't that like inviting a vampire into your home?
Exactly. Sauron twists their faith, their values. He portrays Morgoth not as a force of darkness and destruction, but as a god. A god who can grant them the one thing they crave: eternal life.
And sadly, tragically, they buy it. Hook, line, and sinker. Our source really drives home how the downfall of Númenor is a direct result of Sauron's influence, their own pride and fear blinding them to the truth.
And it all culminates in that cataclysmic event, the downfall of Númenor. Ar-Pharazôn, the king, completely seduced by Sauron's promises, tries to take the Undying Lands by force, which, let's be honest, was never going to end well.
Yeah, not exactly the smartest move in the history of bad decisions. So the Valar, they're not too happy about this little power grab, right?
To say the least, they unleash their wrath, and, well, let's just say Atlantis has nothing on Numenor. The island kingdom is swallowed by the sea, gone, vanished, wiped off the map.
Talk about a cautionary tale about biting off more than you can chew. But what about Sauron? He goes down with the ship.
His physical form is destroyed, yes. But here's the thing about evil. It has a way of sticking around, like a bad smell you just can't get rid of. Sauron's spirit endures, returning to Middle-earth, and let me tell you, he is not in a forgiving mood.
Yeah, I bet. Makes you wonder if those anger management classes would have done him any good. So, what's next on Sauron's revenge tour?
We're talking epic-level payback here. Sauron returns to Mordor, begins rebuilding his strength, amassing his forces for a whole new war, a war that will pit him against, well, pretty much everyone.
This is where we get the epic showdown, right? The War of the Last Alliance. Elves, men, dwarves, everyone joining forces to face off against Sauron. It's like the greatest team-up in history.
Except with a lot more at stake than just bragging rights. Our source paints a pretty bleak picture of this war. Sauron, he's at the height of his power, wielding the One Ring, laying waste to entire armies. It's a desperate fight for survival, a true test of courage and resilience.
Talk about your bad days. But amidst all that darkness, there's a glimmer of hope, right?
Enter Isildur, son of Elendil, a prince of men with destiny knocking at his door. He manages to cut the ring from Sauron's hand, effectively ending Sauron's reign of terror. Or so you'd think.
That's the problem with powerful artifacts. They tend to come with a few side effects.
Kind of like that buy one, get one free deal that sounds great until you read the fine print. So what happens? Does the ring have a hidden warranty or something?
You could say that. Instead of destroying the ring, ensuring Sauron's permanent demise, Isildur, well, he makes a different choice. He keeps it. And thus, the stage is set for, well, you know, the Lord of the Rings.
It's a pivotal moment in the story, a reminder that even in victory, the choices we make can have profound consequences for ourselves and for generations to come.
And that brings us full circle. From a Maia obsessed with order to the Dark Lord who almost ruled it all, Sauron's story is one for the ages. It's about ambition, about the seductive nature of power, and the dangers of letting darkness take root in your heart. But it's also a reminder that even the smallest act of courage, like those hobbits who dared to defy him, can change the course of history. Sauron might be gone, but the echoes of his choices, they still resonate today.